We've almost hit single-digit days until Ohio State football officially kicks off in the horseshoe behind us. For now, we'll just talk about these Buckeyes inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, talk to safeties and safeties and tight ends on Tuesday night. Tim May, he's here to break it down. Andy Backstrom's here to break it down. And me, Spencer Holbrook. Let's talk about him. Tim, what'd you learn?
I learned that Jelani Thurman is working hard to get on the field. He thinks he has a great shot at it. As you well know, the first practice we ever saw when he was on the field here a couple of years ago in spring, he just jumped out right at you, right?
Yeah.
But it takes a lot to get on the field, especially as a tight end at Ohio State, with all that they ask of you from the blocking, from the knowing what's up, from the run game. I mean, you're as much a component in the run game as you are in the passing game. You know, one play you might be protecting, the next play you might be running a seam route, 50 yards down the field, et cetera. G. Scott said Jelani is making serious progress this preseason camp. So that's one thing I learned. I mean, I'm not going to hog the whole light here because I learned a lot of things today.
Well, now that we've started with tight ends, we'll continue with tight ends. Andy, what'd you learn about the tight end room?
Toughness. And I think when Keenan Bailey talked to us in the spring, the goal was not to replace Cade Stover, but to have the toughest unit on the team. It feels like somewhere between spring and summer they achieved that because Bennett Christian told us that's where they're at right now. And toughness, it can be defined in multiple different ways. I feel like we talk about it with this program all the time, but it does feel a little bit different going into this season with not just the tight ends, but all of these players. I don't know if it's bringing in Chip Kelly and the renewed run game and the offensive line improvements through what they did with the workouts, but it does feel like there's this heightened sense of physicality with this team. And maybe we'll see that manifest in the offense with more running the football, who knows? And of course, the tight ends factor into that with the blocking that they do. And whether it's Will Kacmarek owning the Y tight end position and the physicality comes with that, or Jelani Thurman talking about the need to get dirty down there sometimes as a blocker, it feels like these guys have really bought in to some of the actual tough aspects of this game. Not that they didn't in years past, but it's showing up more, I think.
Yeah, I learned that we already know what G. Scott is as a route runner, as a pass catcher. He's a former wide receiver. Like, he's got that stuff down. Will Kacmarek has to be able to do that, though, if he's going to play here. And the things that Keenan Bailey said, the things that Will Kacmarek said, lead me to believe that he can do those things. Keenan was the chief architect, I would say, of the Cade Stover route tree, because Cade credits the route tree that he was able to run and do it pretty well to Keenan Bailey. So I asked Keenan, do you see the similarities there with Will Kacmarek and his progression compared to when you got your hands on Cade Stover and started working with him as a pass catcher? He said, yeah, the similarities are there for sure. It's hard to compare somebody to Cade because of how good Cade was, but if Will Kacmarek is a shade even of what Cade Stover was this past 2 years, you're talking about a tight end who is really dirty and physical. Not dirty as in bad plays, but getting his hands dirty and getting physical at the line of scrimmage, but can also go out and run routes. Like, that's what you need. We know Jelani Thurman can do that. We know G. Scott can do that. But if Will Kacmarek can do that, I think it takes the offense up even further because then you've got a couple guys who can do both.
Yeah, well, that's what Chip Kelly's going to demand that. I mean, he's a 12 personnel. That's 2 tight ends, possibly even 13 personnel, 3 tight ends if he can get away with it. Type guy, and that's part and parcel to what makes his running game click is the play of those guys, because you can do so many things with those guys. The Swiss Army knives of the offense, the tight ends. Mm-hmm. Can I jump ahead and say what else I learned today?
Well, we're not going to get to safeties just yet because I'm going to talk about Bennett Christian for just a second.
Oh, okay. Well, you go ahead and talk about Bennett Christian. I think this tight end group, though, I think they're pleased with the way this group is progressing is what I picked up from things, just from talking to people about them and things. I mean, G. Scott you can tell he's a bona fide, long-time journeyman player here who this may be his year. I even asked him about it, There's no predicting at this point in a preseason camp about who's going to play the most and all that kind of stuff. But he definitely exudes leadership in that room, and I think anybody will tell you that. Jelani Thurman has sat in on most of G. Scott's press conference availability, and it was really funny because Jelani is picking up even how to handle that aspect of the game, which is occasionally talking to us. So, and I don't think there's probably no one on this team better than G. Scott Jr. talking. He gets that from his dad, G. Scott Sr., but there are a lot of guys that are right up there too. Don't get me started.
Yeah. I just real quick, then we'll go to safety, and I'll start with Andy at safety. I'm sorry, Tim.
That's all right.
Bennett Christian is really interesting to me. Suspended last year, all year. This guy comes from a high football pedigree family. Dad played at Tennessee, uncle played at Penn State. He knows what it takes. Suspended all year last year, just a sucker punch to the gut for him. Had to go against Jack and JT every single day in practice. And he claims that he held his own in those. And he said, you can ask Jack and JT. Well, I'm going to.
What was the key word there, held?
Yeah, no. Joking. But I asked Keenan Bailey about Bennett Christian. He cut me off and said that he's tough as SH. I don't swear on this show, but he's tough as that. And I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. I told Bennett that, and he's like, oh, that's a great compliment. Credit to Coach Key. He's looking around for him, trying to get his attention. It's a guy who is really, really tough and knows what it takes. Really went through something last year by his own doing, and he's not blaming anybody but himself. He's not asking for pity, and I'm not giving him pity. I just think that it sets up for him where hey, if you need a second blocking tight end, I don't know if they're going to be afraid to send Bennett Christian out there. He looks like a guy who's kind of ready to go, and he's changed his mindset, he's changed his attitude. I just think that he's worth mentioning on this show before we go to safeties. Andy, what did you learn from the safeties?
Well, Tim asked Jim Knowles last week what was the big question going into the second scrimmage. Jim Knowles said it's safety depth. They know they have the two guys in Caleb Downs, Lathan Ransom. They love those two. Those could be maybe the best safety tandem in the country.
I think
and that doesn't even sound unreasonable. So,
no.
But then it's the safety depth behind them. And Malik Hartford, for me, comes to mind first. He started 2 games last year. One was a tough debut for him in that kind of role. Got yanked out of the first defensive series against Youngstown State. Then he started again against Michigan State later in the year and graded out a champion. And talking to him, it's all about confidence. And where he says he's gained confidence as the game slowed down for him. He can play faster. He's bigger. He put on 20 pounds of weight last offseason. It was tough to maintain all of that, but he feels like he's in a good spot now, hovering around that 200-pound mark. He feels like he can play both the strong safety spot and the free safety spot. And he said that there's really this year not a whole lot of difference between those positions. And you kind of get the sense with talking to Caleb Downs just how much they're going to move him around and really all of those safeties. So when I think of the depth, it's not only Malik Hartford, but also Jalen McClain, who's in a similar spot as Malik Hartford was last year, shedding the black stripe, turning a lot of heads. And he said his advice to Jalen McClain was just know your job, know your assignment, get in the books, study the playbook, watch film, because when it's your opportunity and your number's called, you got to do it.
Yeah, I think anybody can imagine sometimes. Not everybody approaches an opportunity in the same realm, and you can be overwhelmed. And it looked like Malik Hartford, just for another term, when he first went in there, in that starting role was overwhelmed by the moment. I mean, where he was. I mean, think about a safety, man. You're sitting there, and you've got everything in front of you. I mean, a football field is a huge expanse.
Yeah.
And you're one of the 11 guys that's out there, and you're supposed to be watching. You've got to keep. There are so many things that has to go through a safety's mind in a split second when he's out there and stuff. And that first shot, you either step into it and or you get overwhelmed. He clearly was overwhelmed. I mean, that may not be the word he used, but you could see by the way he was not playing correctly that he was overwhelmed. And they had to get him out there. And then he settles down, and boom, now he's an understudy to 2 of the best safeties in the country, maybe the best safety tandem in the country. I would say that. And those are 2 guys. When you talk to Caleb Downs, you talk to Lathan Ransom, they're the opposite of overwhelmed, at least in my book. I mean, they just seem like they've got their act together. They know what's happening. They talked, both of them talked about the interchangeability. If in fact that's a correct term of that use of that word, from the safety position. There is no free and strong. They can line up free and strong, but they can do all kinds of other things, one play to the next and stuff. And that's that Jim Knowles approach to safety play. And it takes a while, I think, for that to become ingrained, but once it does, I think guys flourish.
Yeah, the big takeaway for me at safety is that I asked Caleb Downs. Well, I asked Lathan Ransom. I said, does it surprise you that you're underrated this coming into the season? Caleb Downs getting all these accolades, which he deserves. But Lathan Ransom's getting no buzz whatsoever on a large scale from national college football scene. And he gave the good answer. I don't pay attention to that stuff. I'm just trying to work hard, that kind of stuff. I asked Caleb Downs the same question about Lathan Ransom. He said, really? I cannot believe that. Lathan Ransom is an amazing football player. He's a leader of the secondary. He knows what he's doing on every play.
But what happened last year?
So, I just think that it's super,
Yeah, but what happened last year to Lathan Ransom?
He got hurt.
Yeah,
but
right when he was really coming on.
But I think that is all. I'm just trying to use this as a reminder to people, like,
Yeah.
what you see, and again, Caleb Downs deserves all of these preseason accolades he's getting. He is an incredible player. He's the most pro-ready player in this program right now, and he's still got to be here for 2 years. It's crazy. But don't forget Lathan Ransom. That's all I'm here to say. Like, that's a guy who has played football. He played a lot of football. He played in the 2020 COVID season as a true freshman, and is now here in year 5, just like, and people just kind of forget about him because of all the other talent around. Like, Andy, this is a guy who knows what he's doing and is pretty excited to do it this year at Ohio State again, beside Caleb Downs.
He didn't just play in the Big Ten championship in 2020. He clinched the game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's been around the block. He's played a lot. And I think, with him, he's a tough guy. Just like we talk about Caleb Downs, he can get his nose dirty. He can be around the line of scrimmage. And I think that's what excites Jim Knowles a little bit this year with getting maybe more aggressive with this defense. I think the safeties are a couple of chess pieces to play with in the sense of creating more havoc behind the line of scrimmage. Wouldn't be surprised if we see both Lathan Ransom and Caleb Downs with more tackles for loss this year, maybe a sack or 2 for both of them. And I think that's what's going to be exciting to watch this team, especially with the safeties, is how they factor into taking the ball away and creating tackles for loss, sacks. Just the more havoc that you can have, the better. And I think that's kind of the task right now for Matt Guerreri in his first year as safeties coach, as well as Jim Knowles as the defensive coordinator.
Yeah, the thing about Lathan Ransom, too, the reason I was interrupting you is the hype train ended for him in Wisconsin when he hopped off the field.
Yeah.
Caleb Downs played in the college football playoff semifinal last year, started as a freshman at Alabama. So, of course, one is going to be more ballyhooed than the other heading into the next season, because Lathan Ransom, I've said this a million times, so this will be 1,013. He was headed, in my opinion, to being recognized as the best safety in the Big Ten last year. He was, in my opinion, he was progressing and playing on that kind of level. So by midseason, if these guys stay healthy, et cetera, I think most people will know who Lathan Ransom is. Clearly, there's going to be a marquee game where he's going to get to show his stuff on October the 12th in Eugene, Oregon.
Yeah, I agree with that, Tim. I think he'll come in handy quite a bit. It's kind of funny. All the buzz is on Caleb Downs because of the true freshman season he had. Only one safety on this roster, though, played in a national title game as a true freshman. It was Lathan Ransom, which is kind of crazy to think about, but that's just the way it works sometimes.
I wonder how much he remembers of that game.
I don't know. We'll have to ask him next time we talk to him. We should have asked him here. That's on.
I mean, who were they playing?
They were playing Alabama, and Caleb Downs chose Alabama over Ohio State the first time.
A lot of symmetry here, ladies and gentlemen.
It's
a lot of symmetry.
It's a small world after all. Tim May, the 41-year vet, Andy Backstrom, me, Spencer Holbrook. We're going to go get to work here in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center as we continue our coverage of Ohio State training camp. The Buckeyes claim training camp is over. They said yesterday was the final day of camp.
By the way, I want to say one quick thing. And once again today, guys were gushing about the play of Will Howard on both sides. Caleb Downs did, and definitely G. Scott did, right on down the line. I mean, we don't get to watch a lot of practice anymore after they actually start playing football in practice. But that's just an update on the quarterback situation.
Yeah, it's not really a situation anymore. It's more just how does Will Howard look?
And getting to talk to Cody Simon about being a captain, and then getting that the Block O award. As he said, he hoped and dreamed of that happening, basically being a captain in college football. Lo and behold, it did. So I think they've got 4 outstanding captains in Jack Sawyer, Mecca Egbuka, who just as easily could have been given that Block O award, in my opinion, and Travion Henderson, Travion just seems like a different dude this year. I don't know if you agree or not, but he's really into the leadership of things and the team aspect of things. And what an interesting group of captains.
I don't know about you, Andy. I think Tim's got a lot to write about.
Yeah, sounds like it. Start with the captains.
I just didn't want to leave that out because I've been impressed with Cody Simon ever since the first time we ever talked to him, and lo and behold, he's getting his, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Tim, I think you should write about it at lettermenrow.com. Those people can go get all of your coverage over at lettermenrow.com. Andy Backstrom and me.
Caleb Downs, man. Well, I can write about him for another day.
Please write about him, yeah. We're going to get out of here, go get to work. Tim's going to go get to work on all those stories that he's been talking about this whole time. Tim May, the 41-year vet, Andy Backstrom, Spencer Holbrook. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Helps us out tremendously. Go to lettermenrow.com. You can see all of our content there.